A March sun beat down mercilessly on the fields of Paradise Valley when Mary felt her legs give way for the third time that morning. The smell of red earth, mixed with the sweet aroma of the crops, swirled around her as she clung to a rough tree trunk, her nails digging into the bark. The fever throbbed in her temples as if someone were hammering inside her skull. 7 months pregnant, 19 years old, and with no place in the world to call her own. She had slept in the barn at Riverview Farm the night before, hidden among sacks of corn, shivering with cold despite the heat radiating from her feverish skin. Before dawn, she left in silence, knowing that if she were discovered there, she would be chased away like a stray dog. It had been that way at the previous farm, and the one before that. 3 weeks wandering through the rural properties of the region, asking for work, begging for food, receiving only looks of contempt and doors slammed in her face. "Lost girl," the women whispered when they saw her pass. "Shameless," the men spat, averting their eyes from the belly that betrayed her condition. Mary had no more tears to cry. She had cried them all when her father kicked her out of the house 2 months ago, screaming that she had brought disgrace to the Oliver family name. "You are no longer my daughter," were the last words she heard from him, before the door was locked and she was left alone on the dirt road, with only a bundle of clothes and her grandmother's rosary hanging around her neck. And John Miller, the handsome boy who swore eternal love under the mulberry tree, who promised marriage before God and everyone, John disappeared when she told him about the baby, vanished like smoke. She learned later, from a cousin who took pity on her, that he had gone to the city to work in a factory. He didn't look back, didn't even ask if she was okay. He simply fled from responsibility like a coward, leaving her to carry the weight of social condemnation alone. Now, under the unforgiving sun of March 1947, Mary walked through the fields of the farthest farm she could reach, Hope Farm. The name was a cruel irony. Hope was exactly what she no longer had. She had come here because she heard in town that the owner, Colonel Anthony Bernard, was a widower and ran the farm alone, with no wife to watch over the employees or spread gossip. Maybe, just maybe, he would have pity. Maybe he would accept her work in exchange for a plate of food and a corner to sleep in until the baby was born. But the heat was unbearable. The fever that had started as a nuisance 2 days ago was now consuming her strength like fire in dry grass. She needed to find the farmer. She needed to ask for help before it was too late. Mary looked around, disoriented. The fields stretched infinitely in all directions, a green sea rippling under the hot wind. Where was the main house? Why was everything spinning? The taste of iron filled her mouth. Her hands, calloused and dirty with earth, instinctively grabbed her belly where the baby moved, frightened by the tremors of its mother's body. "Hold on, my son," she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak. "We're going to be okay. I promise we're going to be okay." But they were empty words, devoid of conviction. How could she promise something when she didn't even know if she would see the sunset that day? It was then that it happened. The whole world tipped sideways. The blue sky swapped places with the red earth. Mary felt her knees hit the ground hard, then her whole body collapsing between the rows of crops. The last conscious thought she had was about the baby. Oh God, the baby. Then everything went dark. Colonel Anthony Bernard didn't like doing the morning inspection alone, but since Martha passed away 3 years ago, many things he didn't like had become routine. The foreman, old Joe, had gone into town to get new tools, so it was left to the farmer to verify if the workers were at the correct harvest points. He adjusted his leather hat, feeling the weight of 52 years on his back, and rode his horse along the narrow path between the plantations. He was a tall man, with broad shoulders and the calloused hands of someone who had worked his entire life. His face, marked by the sun, bore deep wrinkles around his clear eyes, eyes that had seen much, suffered many losses, but never lost that spark of kindness that Martha loved so much in him. "You have too soft a heart for a farmer, Tony," she used to say, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. "One day, that's going to get you into trouble." And she was right, as she always was. The horse, a chestnut named Thunder, stopped suddenly, whinnying restlessly. Anthony frowned, pulling the reins. "What is it, boy?" That was when he saw it. A shape fallen between the plants, about 20 yards from the trail. From afar, it looked like a burlap sack, forgotten by the workers. But burlap sacks didn't wear a faded blue gingham dress. The farmer's heart raced. He dismounted in an agile movement that belied his age and ran toward the fallen figure. When he got close, his breath hitched. It was a girl, young, very young, and pregnant, very pregnant. She was lying on her side, her face pale as candle wax, cracked lips parted, dark brown hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. He knelt beside her, placing his hand on her thin neck to check for a pulse. It was there, weak, irregular, but it was there. Miss, can you hear me?" Nothing. Anthony looked around, looking for help, but the workers were too far away, on the other side of the plantation. There was no time. The fever radiated from her body like heat from an ember. He needed to get her to the house immediately. Call Dr. Evans from town. Without thinking twice, Anthony passed one arm under her knees and the other under her shoulders, lifting her from the ground with a grunt of effort. She was too light, frighteningly light for a pregnant woman. The shoulder bones were prominent under the worn dress. How long had she gone without eating properly? The farmer settled her in his arms, noticing how her head fell against his chest, trusting as a child. There was something in that face, even pale, even dirty with earth, that squeezed his heart in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. It was the same expression Martha had when she was sick, that absolute vulnerability, that total dependence on the kindness of others. Anthony whistled for Thunder, who came trotting obediently. With difficulty, he mounted the saddle holding the girl, settling her in front of him. "Hang in there, girl," he murmured, even knowing she couldn't hear him. "You're going to get well. I promise you're going to get well." He touched his heels to the horse's flanks, and they galloped toward the big house. The Big House of Hope Farm was an imposing two-story building, painted white with blue shutters, surrounded by century-old oak trees. When Anthony entered through the main gate carrying the unconscious girl, the servants who were in the yard stopped what they were doing to stare, open-mouthed. Bernice, the cook who had worked there for 20 years, dropped her basket of clothes and ran toward the boss. "My Lord in heaven, Mr. Anthony, what happened? Who is this girl?" Her voice was a mixture of concern and scandal. Anthony walked right past her, climbing the porch steps with firm strides. "I found her passed out in the plantation. She has a high fever. Send Joe to get Dr. Evans now. Now, Bernice." The tone of command admitted no questioning. "But Mr. Anthony, you don't even know who this woman is." "And she is?" Bernice looked significantly at Mary's belly. "She's expecting a child. People will talk. You know how the town is." Anthony stopped at the door, turning to face her with those clear eyes that could be sweet as honey or hard as stone. At that moment, they were hard. "I know how the town is, yes. Full of people who go to church every Sunday and spend the rest of the week judging their neighbors. This girl needs help, and in this house, when someone needs help, we help. Understood?" Bernice lowered her head, ashamed. "Yes, sir. I'll send for the doctor." She made to turn away but stopped. "Do you want me to prepare the guest room?" Anthony looked at the girl in his arms. Her dress was made of cheap fabric, faded from washing. Her feet were swollen inside old shoes. Her fingernails were broken, dirty with earth. She was not a girl from a rich family. She had no one to defend her, and she was there, completely at the mercy of his kindness. "No," he said finally. "Prepare Martha's room. The one with the good bed, the linen sheets, and heat water for a bath. When the doctor arrives, she needs to be clean for him to examine her properly." Bernice's eyes widened. Mrs. Martha's room? The room that had been locked since she died, that the colonel let no one enter? But she knew that look on the boss's face. It was no use arguing. "Yes, sir," she replied softly, before running off to call Joe. Anthony climbed the stairs carefully, protecting the girl's head from hitting the doorframe. The second-floor hallway smelled of beeswax and lavender. He passed the closed doors of the empty rooms until he reached the last door on the right. His free hand trembled a little as he turned the knob. The door opened with a soft creak, revealing the room he hadn't seen in 3 years. Everything was just as Martha had left it. The double bed with the white crochet quilt. The vanity with the perfume bottles still arranged in a row. The lace curtain filtering the sunlight. Her scent still lingered in the air, faint but unmistakable. Rose water and talcum powder. Anthony felt his chest tighten, but he didn't retreat. Carefully, he placed the girl on the quilt, settling her head on the pillow. Under the clear light of the room, he could see her better. She must have been about 19, maybe 20. She was beautiful, with those delicate features that resembled the Madonnas in church paintings. But there was suffering etched around her mouth, in the tension of her forehead, even while unconscious. The dress was torn at the hem, stained with dirt and sweat. Her thin arms showed recent scratches, probably from thorns. Where had she walked? How long had she been wandering? "Who are you, girl?" Anthony murmured, gently brushing away a lock of hair stuck to her forehead. The fever burned under his fingers. "Where did you come from?" As if in response, the girl moaned softly, turning her head from side to side. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, a protective gesture even in her sleep. Mother. She was going to be a mother, and she was completely alone. Bernice entered the room carrying a basin of water and clean cloths, with 2 younger maids behind her bringing buckets of hot water. Her eyes widened, seeing the girl in Mrs. Martha's bed. But she had the sense not to comment. "Joe has already gone to get the doctor. I brought water and cloths to clean her up." Anthony nodded, stepping back to give them space. "Take these clothes off her. Wash her properly. Put a clean nightgown on her. And be careful, Bernice. She's expecting a baby." "I know how to take care of a pregnant woman, Mr. Anthony. I've delivered more babies in this life than you can imagine." There was an almost maternal tone in the cook's voice now. All the previous disapproval dissolved by the natural pity every woman feels seeing another in suffering. "You can leave, sir. This isn't something for a man to see." Anthony left the room, closing the door behind him. In the silent hallway of the big house, he leaned against the wall and ran a hand over his face. What was he doing? Bernice was right. The town would talk. They already gossiped about everything he did, about his every move since Martha died. A widowed farmer, still relatively young, was fresh meat for the poisonous tongues of the church ladies in town. And now he had brought a pregnant girl, a stranger, unmarried by the looks of it, and put her in his late wife's room. He could hear the conversations from here, on the porches, in the church pews, in the main square. "But did you see? Anthony Bernard has lost his mind completely. He brought a lost woman into his house. I bet the child is his. I bet that's why Martha died." of heartbreak. The lies would spread like a plague. But when he closed his eyes, he saw that girl fallen in the fields again. He saw the pale face, the cracked lips, the big belly where an innocent child depended on her to survive. And he remembered Martha, remembered his wife's last words before she died. "Tony, promise me one thing. Promise you won't harden your heart. Promise you'll keep being the good man I knew. Promise?" He had promised, and he was going to keep the promise, no matter what others said. Dr. Evans arrived an hour later, a short, stout man of about 60, with round glasses and a worn leather bag. Anthony took him straight to the room. Bernice had done a good job. The girl was clean, wearing a white cotton nightgown, her hair brushed and spread on the pillow. Still unconscious, but her breathing seemed a little more regular. The doctor examined her in silence, checking her pulse, listening to her heart, palpating her belly with experienced hands. Finally, he turned to Anthony with a grave expression. "High fever, severe dehydration, malnutrition. From her state, I'd say she hasn't eaten properly in weeks, maybe more than a month." He paused significantly. "Anthony, this girl was dying. A few more days like this, and we would have lost her and the child." The farmer felt his stomach turn. "But will she be okay?" The doctor took off his glasses, cleaning the lenses with a handkerchief. "She will, with proper care. Absolute rest, good food, lots of water. The fever will break in a few days, but the pregnancy," he hesitated, "it's risky. Her body has been through a lot of stress. She needs to stay in bed until the baby is born. No work, no effort." "She stays here then," Anthony said firmly, "until she recovers completely. Until the child is born, if necessary." Dr. Evans studied him for a long moment, then placed a hand on the farmer's shoulder. "Do you know what you're doing, Anthony? People will talk." "Do you know this girl?" Anthony looked at the fragile figure on the bed. "No, I don't even know her name. But does that matter? She needed help. I helped. It's what decent people do." The doctor sighed, shaking his head with a half smile. "You're just like your father, Anthony. A heart too big for your own good. I'll leave some medicine and come back tomorrow to see how she is." He packed his things in the bag. "And if anyone asks, and they will ask, I'll tell the truth. You saved this girl's life and her child's. Anyone who has a problem with that can come talk to me first." Mary woke up when the sun was already setting. The first thing she noticed was that she was no longer on the hard ground between the crops. She was in a bed, a real bed, soft, with sheets that smelled of lavender. The second thing was that she was no longer wearing the dirty dress. She was clean, wearing a nightgown that wasn't hers. And the third thing, the one that made her heart race in panic, was that she didn't know where she was. She tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness made her fall back onto the pillow. "Easy, miss, easy." A female voice, soft but firm. Mary turned her head and saw a black woman of about 50 sitting in a chair beside the bed, holding a cup of tea. "You fainted in the plantation. The boss brought you home." Bernice approached, offering the cup. "Here, it's chamomile tea. It'll do you good." Where am I?" Mary's voice came out hoarse, scratchy. Bernice helped her sit up, arranging pillows behind her back. "At Hope Farm, in Colonel Anthony Bernard's house. He found you fallen in the field." Mary's eyes widened. The farm, she had made it. And the farmer, had he helped her? He didn't send me away? Send you away? Child, the man almost killed his horse, galloping to bring you here. Called the doctor, gave orders to treat you right, put you in the best room in the house. Bernice shook her head, still incredulous at the situation. "You're lucky. Some folks would have walked right past you lying on the ground. But the Colonel, he has a good heart. Too good sometimes." Mary drank the tea in small sips, feeling the hot liquid go down her dry throat. Tears began to run down her face without her being able to control them. When was the last time someone had been kind to her? When was the last time someone treated her like a person and not like trash? I can't pay. I have no money. I have nothing. Nobody asked for payment, said Bernice gently, taking a cloth and wiping her face. The boss doesn't expect anything in return. He just wants you to get well. She hesitated. What's your name, child? Mary swallowed hard. Her name? She had almost forgotten she had a name after weeks of being called lost, tramp, shameless. Marianne Oliver. Marianne, repeated Bernice, and there was something maternal in the way she spoke, as if she were blessing the name. Well then, Marianne, you're going to stay here until you recover. The doctor said you need rest, good food, and that's what you're going to get. She stood up, smoothing her apron. Now lie down properly. I'll get some soup for you. You're too weak. After Bernice left, Mary lay looking at the room. It was beautiful, much more beautiful than anywhere she had ever slept. The furniture was dark, polished wood. There was a crucifix on the wall, along with a picture of St. Lucy. The window had lace curtains. It was the room of a lady, a respectable woman. Why had the farmer put her there? She put her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move. Did you hear that, my son? We're safe. For now, we're safe. But even in that moment of relief, a shadow of fear hovered over her heart. How long would the farmer let her stay? And when she had to leave, where would she go? An unmarried girl with a baby had no future in the countryside, had no future anywhere. But for now, in that moment, she was in a clean bed, in a warm room, and someone was bringing her soup. For now, it was enough. Mary closed her eyes, exhausted, and for the first time in months, felt something dangerously like hope. Downstairs in the dining room, Anthony Bernard ate alone, as he had done every night since Martha died. But his thoughts were all upstairs, in the room where a stranger was resting. He didn't fully understand why he had done what he did. Of course, it was his Christian duty to help someone in need. But there was something more, something he couldn't name. When he saw her fallen on that ground, so fragile and vulnerable, something awakened inside him. Something that had been dormant for 3 years. The need to protect, to care, to be important in someone's life again. And now she was there, under his roof, under his protection. And whatever happened next, Anthony Bernard knew one thing. He wasn't going to let anything bad happen to that girl again. Not while he had the strength to stop it. He didn't know yet, none of them knew, that this decision would change everything. That the objects Mary carried in her bundle of old clothes, a yellowed letter, a faded photo, a wooden rosary, held secrets that would explain it all. Secrets buried for decades. Secrets that, when revealed, would shake the ground beneath the feet of all Paradise Valley. But that night, while Mary slept her first peaceful sleep in months, and Anthony finished his dinner in silence, neither of them imagined the storm that was about to break over their heads. A storm that would begin the next day, when the news spread through the town. Colonel Bernard had brought a pregnant, unmarried woman into his home, and society's judgment, cruel and relentless, was just beginning. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any chapters. And tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching? Let's see how many folks are here reliving these stories of our countryside. Morning arrived at Hope Farm, bringing with it the song of thrushes and the smell of fresh coffee rising from the kitchen. Mary woke up confused for a moment, forgetting where she was, until the memory of the previous day came back like a wave. The farmer, the fainting, the unexpected kindness. She sat up slowly in bed, touching her belly instinctively. The baby moved, calm, as if he too felt that, at least for now, they were safe. The door opened with a soft creak, and Bernice entered carrying a tray. "Good morning, child. How are you feeling?" Mary tried to smile, but shame weighed on her like a stone. "Better, Miss Bernice, much better. I need to thank your boss. I need to speak with him." Bernice placed the tray on the nightstand. There was fresh bread, butter, guava jelly, hot milk, and fruit. "You'll talk to him all right, but first eat. You're still too weak." Mary looked at the food, and her eyes filled with tears. How long had it been since she saw such abundance? She began to eat slowly, savoring every piece of bread and butter as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Bernice watched her with a mixture of pity and curiosity. "Can I ask you something, Mary? Where did you come from? Where is your family?" The question made Mary stop chewing. She swallowed with difficulty, looking at the plate. "I'm from Willow Creek. My parents kicked me out of the house when they found out I was expecting a baby." Her voice was low, heavy with shame. "The child's father ran away, went to the city, and left me alone. My father said I had dishonored the family, that I was no longer his daughter." Bernice made a sound of disapproval with her tongue. "Men, always the same story. They make the mess and run. The woman is the one left carrying the weight alone." She sat on the edge of the bed, her dark eyes full of understanding. "Did you love him, this boy who ran away?" Mary nodded, a tear running down her face. "I did, or I thought I did. He swore he'd marry me, swore before God." "And you believed him," said Bernice softly, not as judgment, but as a statement of fact. "Of course you believed him. You were young, he was handsome, and pretty words always deceive. It wasn't your fault, child. You were deceived." She took Mary's hand and squeezed it. "But now you have a chance. The Colonel is willing to help you. You'll stay here until the baby is born. After, well, after, we'll see." Mary wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "Why? Why is he doing this? He doesn't even know me." Bernice was silent for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "Colonel Anthony, he's a good man, always has been. But after Mrs. Martha died, he became different, quieter, lonelier. I think when he saw you lying there, he remembered her. Remembered when she was sick and no one could do anything to save her." "His wife died of what?" Mary asked softly. Bernice sighed deeply. "Fever. A fever no one knew how to cure. She suffered a lot in the last days. The Colonel stayed by her side until the end, holding her hand, praying. When she went, it was like she took a piece of him with her." She stood up, smoothing her apron. "That's why I tell you, you're lucky. Few men in this world would do what he did." After Bernice left, Mary finished eating slowly, thinking about everything she had heard. The farmer was a widower, still grieving for his dead wife, and yet he had stopped his life to help a complete stranger. She needed to thank him personally, needed to make it clear she wasn't a freeloader, that she would work to repay his kindness as soon as she was recovered. Downstairs, on the porch of the big house, Anthony Bernard was having his morning coffee when he saw the wagon of Otis, the owner of the town general store, coming up the dirt road. It wasn't delivery day. The farmer frowned, placing the cup on the saucer. When the wagon stopped in front of the house, Otis got down with that expression Anthony knew well, the expression of someone bringing bad news disguised as a courtesy visit. "Good morning, Otis. Wasn't expecting your visit today." Anthony walked down the porch steps, extending his hand. The merchant shook it, but there was hesitation in the gesture. Good morning, Anthony. Sorry to show up like this without notice, but I needed to talk to you. It's about what people are saying in town. Anthony crossed his arms over his chest. Let me guess, about the girl I brought here yesterday. Otis took off his hat, running a hand through his thinning hair. Anthony, you know I respect you a lot. I knew your father, knew you since you were a boy. But people are talking, and they aren't speaking well. He looked around, as if afraid of being heard. They say the girl is unmarried, that she's expecting the child. They say you put her in Mrs. Martha's room. The church ladies are already calling it a scandal, saying you're dishonoring the memory of your late wife. Anthony's jaw tightened. And what do you think, Otis? You who call yourself my friend, do you think I would do something dishonorable? The merchant shrank a little. It's not what I think, Anthony. It's what the town is saying. And you know how it is. Once people start talking, the fire spreads. I came here as a friend to warn you. Things could get difficult for you if you keep this girl here. Difficult how? Anthony's voice was dangerously calm. Otis shifted his feet, uncomfortable. Well, you know, the priest is already talking about making a sermon on misdirected charity. The good families of the town might stop doing business with you. And there's Colonel Justin. He paused significantly. He's saying you're losing your mind, that a lost girl has no place in a respectable house. Anthony took a step forward, and there was something in his eyes that made Otis step back. Colonel Justin, that hypocrite who has two families, one in town and another in the country, but goes to church every Sunday and sits in the front pew? That Colonel Justin? His voice was sharp as a razor. And the church ladies who talk about me are the same ones who treat their maids worse than dogs? Are these the people I should listen to? Anthony, I'm just trying to help, started Otis, but the farmer cut him off. Help? Do you know how you can help? By telling those gossiping people that the girl in my house almost died of hunger and fever. That she was abandoned by her family, betrayed by the man who promised to marry her, and left on the road like trash. And that if I hadn't helped, she and the child would be dead right now. He pointed a finger at Otis's chest, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can come talk to me personally. The merchant swallowed hard, putting his hat back on his head. All right, Anthony, I'll pass the message. He returned to the wagon, but before climbing up, turned one more time. Just one last thing. The girl. How long will she stay? Anthony didn't hesitate. As long as she needs. Until she and the child are well. If that takes a month, 2 months, or a year, it's nobody's business but mine. When the wagon disappeared down the road, Anthony stood on the porch for a long moment, rage boiling inside him. It wasn't anger at Otis. The man was just the messenger. It was anger at the hypocrisy, the cruel judgment, the whole town that thought itself so Christian, but didn't have a drop of true compassion. He thought of Martha, of how disappointed she would be with these people she once called friends. Boss? Bernice's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She was at the door of the house, hands twisting her apron. Mary is asking to speak with you. She says she needs to thank you personally. Anthony took a deep breath, calming his temper. Tell her she doesn't need to thank me for anything. But if she wants to talk, she can come down. I'll be in the living room. Minutes later, Mary appeared at the top of the stairs. She was still wearing the nightgown, with a shawl thrown over her shoulders. She descended the steps slowly, holding the banister, her large belly making movement difficult. Anthony stood up when she entered the room, taking off his hat in an automatic gesture of respect. It was the first time he had seen her awake, conscious. Her eyes were dark brown, large and expressive, still swollen from crying. Colonel Bernard, she began, her voice trembling. I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life. Saved my son's life. She made to kneel, but Anthony took a step forward, holding her by the arm. No, don't do that. You don't need to kneel for anyone. His touch was firm but gentle, and Mary felt tears welling up again. But I need to thank you. I need to say that I will work to pay for everything. I'll do whatever you order. I'll clean, cook, whatever is needed. Just don't send me away. Please. Her voice broke on the last word. Anthony guided her to the sofa, helping her sit before occupying the armchair opposite. Mary, can I call you Mary? She nodded. Mary, you are not going to work. Not now. You need to rest, recover. The doctor was clear about that. But I can't stay here for free, she protested, wiping her face with the shawl. People will speak ill of you. They must already be talking. A widower with a single pregnant woman in his house. I know what they'll say. I don't want to cause trouble for you. Anthony leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Let me tell you something, Mary. People will talk anyway. If I help, they talk. If I don't help, they say I'm a man without a heart. There's no winning with these folks. He paused, choosing his words. My wife, Martha. She always said, we aren't in this world to please others. We are here to do what is right. And leaving you to die in that field wouldn't be right. So I don't care what they say. Mary studied him for a long moment. There was genuine kindness in his clear eyes, but also pain. A deep pain she recognized, because she carried her own. You must have loved your wife very much, she said softly. Anthony smiled, but it was a sad smile. I did. 30 years married. She was single fab. She was the best person I ever knew. He looked at the framed photo on the wall, Martha on her wedding day, young and radiant. When she died, I thought I had died with her. I stayed 3 years in this house, living but not truly living, just existing. And why did you help me then? Asked Mary. If you were so lost, why did you stop to help me? Anthony turned his gaze back to her, and there was something vulnerable in his expression. Because when I saw you fallen on that ground, so fragile, so in need of someone, I remembered that I am still capable of making a difference. I remembered that I can still help, and that made me feel alive again, for the first time in 3 years. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who recognize in the other the same pain, the same loneliness. Finally, Mary spoke, her voice just a whisper. Thank you, Colonel. From the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Anthony nodded. You can call me Anthony, and you will stay here until you are strong again, until the baby is born, until you can manage on your own. This isn't charity. It's what decent people do. The days that followed established a strange but comforting routine. Mary spent the mornings in her room, resting as the doctor had ordered. Bernice came up with meals, always plentiful, always made with care. The cook had taken Mary under her wing, treating her with the tenderness of a mother. Eat it all, child. That baby needs to grow strong. And Mary ate, feeling her body strengthen day after day. In the afternoon, when the heat eased, she went down to the porch. She sat in the rocking chair, the same one Mrs. Martha used to sit in, and watched the fields stretching to the horizon. Anthony was usually working, but sometimes he stopped to talk. They were simple conversations at first, about the weather, about the farm, about the birds that came to peck crumbs on the porch floor. But gradually, the conversations became deeper. Mary told him about her childhood in Willow Creek, about her seamstress mother who died when she was 12, about her tailor father who never recovered from the loss and became hard, distant. She told him about John, about the broken promises, about the shame she felt when she realized she was pregnant and he had fled. Anthony, in turn, spoke about Martha, about how they met at a June festival, how he courted her for 2 years before asking for her hand in marriage, about the children they tried to have but never came. "I think that's why God brought you to me," he said one afternoon, looking at Mary's belly. "To remind me that I can still take care of someone. I can still be important in someone's life." Mary felt her heart tighten. "You are important, Mr. Anthony. You gave me hope when I had none left. You gave me dignity when everyone treated me like trash." She placed her hand on her belly. "And this son of mine will grow up knowing that there are good men in the world. He will grow up knowing that you saved his life." But not everything was quiet moments of conversation on the porch. The town hadn't forgotten the scandal. On the contrary, the gossip grew like weeds. Mrs. Lucy, the judge's wife, stopped buying produce from Hope Farm. Father Andrew preached a sermon on charity that leads to sin, and everyone knew who he was looking at when he spoke. Even the farm workers began to whisper. One day, old Joe, the foreman who had worked there for 15 years, asked to speak with Anthony. "Boss, with all due respect, but the men are talking. They're saying that the girl might be more than a guest. That you might be taking advantage of her." Anthony turned red with anger. "And you? Do you believe that, Joe?" The foreman lowered his head. "Not me, boss. I know you. But the people," cut in Anthony, "can think whatever they want. I'm not sending that girl away to satisfy other people's curiosity. And if anyone here on the farm has a problem with that, they can take their things and leave. I make that very clear." Old Joe nodded quickly. "All right, boss. Just wanted to warn you." But Anthony knew the message had been delivered, and he also knew that things were getting worse. The tension exploded one Saturday afternoon when Anthony went into town to pick up medicine Dr. Evans had prescribed for Mary. He was leaving the pharmacy when he came across Colonel Justin and 3 of his henchmen standing on the sidewalk. Justin was a big man, with a prominent belly and waxed mustache, owner of lands almost as extensive as Anthony's. "Bernard," said Justin, blocking the way, "we need to talk." Anthony stopped, his hand clutching the package of medicine. "About what, Justin?" The other man spat on the ground. "About the whore you're hiding in your house. About the scandal you're causing. The good families of this town are ashamed." Anthony's hand closed into a fist, but he kept his voice calm. "Watch what you say, Justin. The girl in my house is a decent person who fell into misfortune, and I am helping her. If you have a problem with that, it's your problem." Justin laughed, an unpleasant sound. "Helping? Is that what you call it now? See, boys? The widower got himself a concubine and wants us to accept it." Anthony took a step forward, eyes flashing. "Repeat that." "Come on, repeat it and see what happens." Justin's henchman moved, but the farmer didn't back down. "You have 2 families, Justin. Everyone knows. You have a woman in town and another in the country. You have children in both places that you don't claim, and you come to talk to me about morals? About scandal?" Justin's face turned purple. "I'm a man. I can do what I want, but you are dishonoring the memory of a saint. Mrs. Martha must be turning in her grave." That was the last straw. Anthony dropped the package and grabbed Justin by the shirt collar. "Don't speak my wife's name with that dirty mouth of yours. You aren't worthy to even step in her shadow." They stood there, forehead to forehead, while people in the street stopped to watch. It was Sheriff Morris who separated the two. "Easy, easy. What's this all about?" Anthony released Justin with a shove, picking up the package from the ground. "This man here is offending a girl under my protection, and offending the memory of my late wife." The sheriff looked from one to the other. "Justin, go home. You too, Anthony. I don't want a fight in my town." Anthony returned to the farm with his blood boiling. When he entered through the gate, he saw Mary on the porch, a worried expression on her face. She had seen the dust on the road, saw how he had arrived too fast. Did something happen? He dismounted the horse, tying the reins to the post. Nothing you need to worry about. But Mary walked down the steps, placing herself in front of him. It was because of me, wasn't it? Someone said something. It wasn't a question. Anthony sighed, taking off his hat and running a hand through his hair. Mary, I already said, people will talk. It doesn't matter. But Mary felt guilt tightening her chest like a vice. It does matter. You don't deserve to go through this. I can leave. I can look for another place. You are going nowhere, said Anthony firmly, holding her shoulders. Did you hear? Nowhere. You are safe here, and I won't let anyone hurt you. There was something in the intensity of his gaze that made Mary feel something strange in her chest. Something warm. Something she shouldn't be feeling. She lowered her eyes, ashamed. Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much? Anthony released her shoulders, stepping back. Because it's right. Because you deserve someone who cares. He paused. And because when I look at you, I see someone who still has faith, still has hope, even after everything you've been through. And that makes me want to protect that hope. Does that make sense? Mary nodded slowly, eyes watering. It does. They stood there on the porch, in the late afternoon, while the sun slowly descended behind the fields. And for the first time since arriving at that farm, Mary understood something important. She wasn't just grateful to Anthony Bernard. She was starting to admire him, to trust him, and maybe, just maybe, starting to feel something deeper, something that scared and comforted her at the same time. If you are enjoying this story, leave a like to help me out. And answer me, could you live in that era, with all that judgment from society? Comment down below. That night, after dinner, something changed. Anthony was in the library when Mary appeared at the door, holding something in her hands. Mr. Anthony, may I come in? He signaled yes, closing the book he was pretending to read. Mary entered slowly, sitting in the chair opposite his desk. In her hands, she held a bundle of worn cloth. I wanted to show you something. These are the only things I have, the only things I brought when I left home. She opened the bundle carefully. Inside were a few folded clothes and 3 objects he separated with reverence. A faded photograph, a yellowed letter, and a dark wooden rosary. This rosary was my grandmother's, Lucy. She raised me until I was 7 before she died. Anthony looked at the rosary, and something in his chest tightened. He knew that type of wood. It was rosewood, the same that grew on his lands. And the shape of the beads, the way the crucifix was attached. There was something strangely familiar. Was your grandmother from here? From Paradise Valley? Mary shook her head. I don't know. She never talked much about the past. She only said she had left something important behind when she left here. She took the photograph, extending it to Anthony. This is the only photo I have of her, taken when she was young, before marrying my grandfather. Anthony took the photo with trembling hands. The image was faded by time, but you could still see the girl's face. She must have been about 20 in the photo. Dark hair tied in a bun, big eyes, a shy smile. And that face, my God, he whispered, the blood draining from his face. Mary leaned forward, worried. Mr. Anthony, are you all right? Did you know her? But Anthony couldn't speak. He looked at that photo as if he had seen a ghost. Because he knew that face. He knew it very well. It was impossible, but it was true. Finally, he found his voice. The letter. What's in the letter? Mary took the yellowed envelope carefully. I never managed to read it all. It's very faded. But there's a name at the start. My dear Augustus. Anthony felt the floor open up beneath his feet. Augustus, Augustus Bernard, his father. Let me see that letter, please. Mary handed over the envelope, and Anthony opened it with trembling fingers. The ink was indeed faded, but he could read some passages. My dear Augustus, I will never forget. Our love was true, but circumstances, forgive me, protect our secret. He raised his eyes to Mary, and they were full of tears. Mary, I need to tell you a story. A story no one in this town knows. Not even I knew the whole truth until now. And it was then, in that silent library, under the dim light of the oil lamp, that Anthony Bernard began to unravel a secret buried for nearly 50 years. A secret about his father, about an impossible love, about a girl who had to flee pregnant. And as he spoke, Mary listened with a racing heart, because she was starting to understand something impossible. Something that would explain everything. Why Anthony had helped her. Why he cared so much. Why he treated her like family. Because maybe she was. Maybe, in some impossible but true way, she really was family. And this discovery was about to change everything. Not just for the two of them, but for the whole town that judged them so much. The truth always comes out, they say. And that truth, when finally revealed, would make the ground shake beneath the feet of Paradise Valley. But for now, as Anthony held that yellowed letter and Mary waited in silence, neither of them imagined that the worst was yet to come. That forces in the town would not accept that closeness between them. And that very soon, a night of fire and violence would test everything they had built, forcing both to choose between safety and truth, between silence and justice. Anthony placed the letter on the desk with trembling hands, the weight of the revelation almost unbearable. Mary watched him in silence, eyes wide, waiting for him to continue. The farmer took a deep breath, ran a hand over his face, and began to speak, his voice charged with emotion. My father, Augustus Bernard, was a good man, but like every man, he had his secrets. He picked up Lucy's photograph again, tracing the outline of the face with his finger. When my father was young, before marrying my mother, he fell in love with a girl, a poor girl, daughter of sharecroppers who worked on a neighboring farm. His parents didn't accept it. They said he needed to marry someone of the same social class. Mary leaned forward, heart racing. And what happened? Anthony closed his eyes for a moment. I never knew her name. My father never told. I only know she got pregnant. And when her family found out, there was a terrible scandal. The girl's father went to my grandfather to demand marriage, but my grandfather was a hard, proud man. He refused, offered money for them to leave, to disappear. My God, whispered Mary, hand covering her mouth. Anthony continued, his voice lower and lower. The girl left in the middle of the night. My father tried to look for her, but she had disappeared. It was like the earth had swallowed her. Months later, my father was forced to marry my mother, a marriage arranged by the families. He never spoke about it, but I knew. I saw it in his eyes, you know? That sadness that never went away completely. He lifted the wooden rosary, examining it under the lamplight. This rosary, my father had one just like it. I saw him praying with a rosary exactly like this when I was a child. Then it disappeared. I always thought he had lost it. Anthony looked at Mary, and his eyes shone with held-back tears. But I think he didn't lose it. I think he gave it to her, to your grandmother, to Lucy. Mary felt tears running down her face. You're saying that my grandmother and your father? She couldn't finish the sentence. Anthony nodded slowly. I think your grandmother Lucy was the love of my father's youth, and if she was pregnant when she left, he paused. the weight of the revelation falling on both like a storm. Then the child she was expecting was my grandfather, completed Mary, voice just a thread. My maternal grandfather. Which means that, she looked at Anthony with wide eyes. Which means we are relatives? Anthony did the math quickly in his head. Your grandfather would be my half-brother, which would make you my grandniece. Blood of my blood, family. The silence that fell over the library was dense, charged with meaning. Mary began to cry harder, sobs shaking her shoulders. That's why you helped me. Some part of you knew, some part recognized it. Anthony knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. I didn't know, Mary. I swear I didn't know consciously. But you're right. Something pulled me to you. Something made me stop in that field, when normally I would have walked right past. He squeezed her hands. And now I know. You aren't a stranger I helped out of pity. You are family. You are blood of my blood. And that child you are expecting. He looked at her belly with tenderness. Is my relative too. Is part of the Bernard family, whether they want it or not. Mary sobbed. But what about the town? And the people who are speaking ill of you? If they find this out, said Anthony firmly, they will have to swallow all the poison they've been spitting, because you have as much right to be in this house as I do. More even, because it was your grandmother who suffered the injustice. It was she who had to flee, who had to raise a child alone, who had to carry the shame while my father continued his life as if nothing had happened. There was guilt in his voice. My father was a coward. And now I have the chance to fix that, to give you what was denied to your grandmother. But before Mary could reply, a scream echoed from outside. Fire! There's fire in the barn! It was old Joe's voice, full of panic. Anthony and Mary ran to the window and saw. Tongues of orange fire were licking the barn roof. Black smoke rising against the night sky. Stay here, ordered Anthony, already running for the door. Lock the door and don't come out. But Mr. Anthony, Mary started, but he had already disappeared down the stairs. She heard the front door slam, heard the shouts of the men outside organizing water buckets. Her heart beat wildly. A fire on a farm was serious business. It could spread quickly, consume everything. She went to the bedroom window, watching the commotion. The flames had already taken half the barn, and the men formed a chain, passing buckets from the cistern. It was then she saw it. Figures in the shadows, away from the fire, watching. 3 men on horseback, standing at the edge of the property. Even from afar, Mary recognized one of them by the large silhouette and the characteristic hat. Colonel Justin. Her blood ran cold. That wasn't an accident. It was revenge. It was a warning. She saw Anthony shouting orders, throwing water on the flames, alongside the employees. The smoke was thick. The heat must have been unbearable. And suddenly, a loud crack, a roof beam giving way. "Watch out!" shouted someone. But it was too late. The beam fell, and Anthony was right under it. Mary let out a scream, hand flying to her mouth. She saw old Joe and other men run, pull the beam, drag Anthony away from the fire. He was moving. Thank God, he was moving, but clearly injured. Without thinking, Mary ran out of the room, stumbled down the stairs in her nightgown, crossed the yard to where the men had laid Anthony on the grass. "Mr. Anthony! Mr. Anthony!" She fell to her knees beside him, hands touching his face stained with soot. He opened his eyes, focusing on her with difficulty. "Mary, I told you to stay inside." There was blood running from a cut on his forehead. "I don't care what you ordered," she said fiercely, tearing the hem of her own nightgown to make an improvised bandage. "You are hurt." Bernice arrived running with water and clean cloths. Let me see. She examined Anthony quickly. Bad cut on the forehead. Might have hit the ribs too. Needs the doctor. But Anthony tried to get up, grunting in pain. The fire! Need to put out the fire! Mary pushed him back with surprising strength. The men are taking care of the fire. You stay here, quiet. Old Joe approached, expression grim. Boss, we managed to control it. The barn is lost, but we stopped it from spreading. But there's something you need to know. He looked significantly at the shadows, where the 3 horsemen had been. They were no longer there. We found this near where the fire started. He held out his hand, showing a silk handkerchief with the initials JM embroidered on it. Justin Moore. Anthony's jaw clenched. That son of a... He started, but Mary interrupted. I saw him. I saw Colonel Justin and 2 men watching the fire from afar. They did this on purpose, Mr. Anthony. They did it to get to you. Anger burned in her eyes, as much as the fire that still crackled in the remains of the barn. Because of me. They did this because of me. Anthony held her hand, squeezing tight despite the pain. It wasn't because of you. It was because they are small men full of malice. It was because they can't stand seeing someone doing what is right. He tried to sit up again, and this time Mary helped him, even with Bernice protesting. But this won't stay like this. Tomorrow, I'm going to the police station. I'm going to show this handkerchief to Sheriff Morris. I'm going to make Justin pay. And if he does something worse, asked Mary, voice trembling, what if next time it's not just the barn? What if it's the house? What if he... She looked at her belly, eyes full of tears. Anthony pulled her into an awkward hug, the pain in his ribs making him grunt, but not letting go of her. I won't let anything happen to you, or your son, I promise. He pulled back, looking into her eyes. But tomorrow we are going to resolve this. We are going to tell the truth, to everyone. The truth? Mary widened her eyes. About us? Anthony nodded. About you being from the Bernard family. About what my grandfather did to your grandmother. About how this whole town conspired to hide a secret. To sweep everything under the rug, while an innocent girl had to flee and raise a child alone. It's time for the truth to come out. That night, after Dr. Evans came, bandaged Anthony's head, confirmed 2 ribs were cracked but would heal, and left shaking his head about the madness of men, Mary couldn't sleep. She sat in the chair beside Anthony's bed. He had insisted on staying in the guest room instead of climbing the stairs, watching him as if he would disappear if she blinked. You should be sleeping, murmured Anthony, opening his eyes and seeing her there. The baby needs you to rest. Mary shook her head. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about everything. She paused. Are you sure? Sure you want to tell everyone? It will be a huge scandal. It will mess with important families. Your father's name, said Anthony firmly, will finally carry the truth. He was a coward once. I won't let cowardice continue to stain our family. He extended his hand, and Mary took it. You deserve recognition. You deserve your place in this family. And your son too. I won't let you be cast out again, suffer again. Not while I have strength. Mary squeezed his hand, tears flowing. Why are you so good? After everything, after the town turned its back. After the fire, after everything, why do you keep defending me? Anthony smiled, a tired but genuine smile. Because when I look at you, I see courage, I see strength, I see someone who went through everything and still has faith, still believes in kindness. And that makes me want to be better. Makes me want to honor Martha's memory, honor your grandmother's memory. Makes me want to do what is right. Dawn arrived slowly, tinting the sky pink and orange. The barn was now just smoking ruins, a charred skeleton recalling the violence of the previous night. But Anthony was already up, dressed in his best clothes, despite the pain in his ribs. determined. Mary came down wearing one of the simple dresses Bernice had sewn for her, hair tied in a bun, her grandmother's rosary hanging around her neck. "Ready?" asked Anthony. She nodded, even if she wasn't. How could anyone be ready to face a whole town? They got into the carriage. Anthony couldn't ride a horse with injured ribs, and set off down the road leading to Paradise Valley. The town was small, a few thousand inhabitants, and on Sunday mornings everyone gathered in the main square after Mass. That was exactly where Anthony was going, to the square, to the heart of the town, where everyone could hear. When they arrived, Mass had already ended, and people were clustered in small groups, chatting, gossiping. When they saw Anthony's carriage stop, followed by Mary getting down with her large and evident belly, the whispers started like a swarm of bees. "Look there, the lost one. She has the nerve to show up here. Anthony has really lost his mind." Anthony helped Mary down, offering his arm for support. Together, they walked toward the church steps, where Father Andrew was still talking to some church ladies. The priest paled upon seeing them. "Anthony, what are you doing? This is absurd." "Absurd," said Anthony loud enough for everyone to hear. "Is this town pretending to be Christian while judging and condemning an innocent girl?" A silence fell over the square. People drew closer, curious, scandalized. Anthony saw Colonel Justin among the crowd, eyes narrowing with rage. "I brought Marianne here today because you all need to hear the truth about who she is. The truth about the sins this town swept under the rug." He took a deep breath, the pain in his ribs cutting like a knife, but he didn't waver. "Marianne is not a stranger. She is not a lost woman I brought in on a whim. She is my grandniece, blood of my blood, family." The murmurs exploded. "What? He's lying. This is madness." But Anthony raised his hand, asking for silence. 50 years ago, my father, Augustus Bernard, fell in love with a girl named Lucy. She was poor, a sharecropper's daughter. When she got pregnant, my grandfather kicked her out, offered money for her to disappear. And she disappeared, raised the child alone, carried the shame alone, while my father married and continued his life as if nothing had happened. He looked around, meeting the eyes of people he had known his whole life. Lucy was Mary's grandmother. The child she carried was her grandfather. Which means Mary has as much right to the Bernard name as I do, has as much right to this family's lands as I do. And the child she is expecting, he placed a protective hand on Mary's belly, is my family too, is a Bernard too. The shock on people's faces was palpable. Mrs. Lucy, the judge's wife, brought a hand to her chest as if she were going to faint. It was Colonel Justin who broke the silence, laughing loud and sarcastic. "What a convenient story, Bernard. The whore invents a kinship, and you believe it? Where is the proof?" Anthony turned to him, eyes like embers. "The proof is here." Mary took the yellowed letter and the photograph from her pocket. "This is a letter from your father to my grandmother, and this is her photo." She held both out to Father Andrew, who took them with trembling hands. The priest examined the letter, eyes widening as he read. Then he looked at the photo, and his face turned gray. "My God," he whispered. I remember this girl. I was a child, but I remember. There was a scandal, my mother spoke in whispers. A girl who had to leave." He looked at Anthony, then at Mary. "It's true, I remember. An old man, so old he needed a cane to walk, approached limping. It was old Mr. Theodore, who must have been about 90. I remember too," he said with a hoarse voice. "I worked on Augustus's father's farm back then. Remember the girl? Beautiful she was, and I remember the day she left. Augustus cried like a child, but his father was inflexible, said the girl was scum, that she wouldn't stain the family name. More people began to speak, old memories resurfacing like ghosts. My mother talked about that. I heard my father comment once. It was always known there was a secret. The narrative Anthony and Mary had brought began to be confirmed through the town's fragmented memories. The truth, buried for so long, finally came to light. Colonel Justin turned red with rage. So what? What if she is a relative? That changes nothing. She's still a single pregnant girl living in a widower's house. Still a scandal. Anthony took a step towards him, voice dangerously low. Do you know what a scandal is, Justin? It's you having set fire to my barn last night. It's you having tried to kill me and put a pregnant girl at risk. He pulled the silk handkerchief from his pocket, showing it to everyone. This here was found at the spot where the fire started. The initials JM, Justin Moore, and there was a witness. Mary saw you and your henchmen watching the fire from afar. Justin paled, looking around to see all eyes fixed on him. That proves nothing. Anyone could have picked up that handkerchief. Sheriff Morris, who was among the crowd, approached. Justin, I'm going to have to take you to the station. I'm going to have to investigate this. Justin backed away, fists clenched. You're crazy. Are you going to believe him because of a handkerchief? But old Joe took a step forward. I saw it too, Sheriff. Saw 3 men on horseback watching the fire. Recognized Justin by his silhouette. And the other 2 must have been Nash and Gerald, who always hang around with him. The crowd began to turn against Justin. The same people who previously supported him now looked at him with suspicion. Arson was a serious crime, especially when it put lives at risk. I didn't do anything, shouted Justin, but his voice sounded false even to him. You will regret this, all of you. He spat on the ground at Anthony's feet before turning and stomping off, his henchmen running after him. Father Andrew cleared his throat, still holding the letter and photo. Anthony, Mary, I owe you an apology. I judged without knowing the full story. Judged like those Pharisees Jesus criticized so much, he turned to the congregation. We all owe an apology. We failed. We failed 50 years ago when we expelled an innocent girl, and we failed now when we judged her granddaughter without mercy. Mrs. Lisi took a step forward, eyes red. Anthony, I was terrible. Spread gossip, stopped doing business with you. All for foolish pride. She looked at Mary. Child, you forgive me. Forgive me for being so cruel. Mary felt tears flow. She nodded, unable to speak. One by one, other people began to approach, apologizing, touching Mary's shoulder gently, shaking Anthony's hand. But it was Otis, the merchant, who said what everyone was thinking. Mary Ann, you are welcome back to Paradise Valley. You are a Bernard, and the Bernards helped build this town. You have your place here, yes ma'am. The whole square began to applaud. Slowly at first, then louder, until the sound echoed between the old buildings. Mary leaned into Anthony, sobbing, legs weak with relief. He held her firm, ignoring the pain in his ribs, whispering in her ear. Did you see? The truth came out. Justice was done. You don't need to hide anymore. You don't need to be ashamed anymore. And while the crowd continued applauding, while the morning sun shone over the square, Mary felt for the first time in months, maybe in years, that she had a place in the world, that she had a family, that she had a future. Leave justice for Mary in the comments, and tell me, which part of this story touched you the most so far? Comment down below. That afternoon, Anthony and Mary returned to Hope Farm different from when they had left. The weight of judgment had been lifted. The truth had set them both free. When they got down from the carriage, Bernice was waiting on the porch, a huge smile on her face. "Everyone already knows, boss. Joe told us. She is family. I knew it. I always knew there was something special about this girl." That night, for the first time, Mary dined at the main table in the dining room, sitting opposite Anthony, no longer as a guest, no longer as a favor, as family, as a Bernard. They talked about the future, about how to rebuild the barn, about how to prepare a room for the baby. And when Mary finally went up to sleep, she stopped at the door of the room that had been Mrs. Martha's. "Excuse me," she whispered to the spirit of the woman she never met, but felt present. "Thank you for marrying a good man. Thank you for making him who he is. I will take care of him, I promise, as family." And in the silence of that room, amidst the smell of lavender and the moonlight entering through the window, Mary felt peace. Finally, peace. Downstairs, Anthony sat alone in the library, holding Lucy's photo. "Father," he whispered to the man who was no longer there to hear, "I fixed it. Fixed what you broke. Your granddaughter is safe now, and your great-grandson will grow up with the name he should have always had, Bernard." He placed the photo carefully in a frame on the desk, beside Martha's photo. Two women who never met, but who now shared a place of honor in his home. And as night fell over Paradise Valley, as Hope Farm rested under the stars, an ancient story finally found its redemption. The sins of the past had been confronted, the injustice had been corrected, and two lonely hearts, a widowed farmer carrying guilt that wasn't his, and a pregnant girl carrying shame that should never have been hers, found together something they thought lost forever. They found family. They found belonging. They found, finally, what that farm always promised in its name: hope. 3 months passed since that memorable Sunday in the square. 3 months in which life at Hope Farm transformed in ways neither Anthony nor Mary could have imagined. Summer had arrived with full force, bringing generous rains that made the fields shine a vibrant green. The barn had been rebuilt, bigger and stronger than before, with the help of neighbors who came to work without charging anything. A silent way of apologizing for rushed judgments. Mary was now in her 9th month of pregnancy, her belly huge, movements slow and careful. But there was something different about her, a light in her eyes, a smile that came easily, a peace that radiated from the inside out. She wasn't the scared girl who had fainted in the fields anymore. She was a woman who knew her worth, who knew her place in the world, who held her head high. That December morning, she was sitting on the porch shelling peas into a basin, Bernice beside her mending clothes. "That boy doesn't want to be born soon, huh?" commented the cook, looking at Mary's belly with a smile. "What's he waiting for? The Christmas party?" Mary laughed, running a hand over her belly. "I think he's too comfortable in there. Good food, warm house, family that will love him. Why come out?" "Family," repeated Bernice with satisfaction. "I still get emotional when I think about it, child. You and the boss, together here, like it always should have been." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Can I ask you something? How do you feel about him, about Mr. Anthony?" Mary stopped shelling the peas, her face flushing slightly. "What do you mean?" Bernice gave that maternal smile, indicating she knew more than she let on. "Child, I've worked in this house for 20 years. I know how to recognize when someone is starting to feel something more than gratitude, and I see how you look at him. I see how his eyes light up when you enter the room." Mary lowered her gaze, heart accelerating. "Bernice, he's my uncle. Well, great-uncle, technically. It would be wrong to feel something, wouldn't it?" The cook shook her head. "You didn't grow up as family. You don't have childhood memories together. The blood you share is distant, from generations ago. And what I see between you," she smiled gently, "is two lonely souls who found each other, who heal each other. There's nothing wrong with that." Mary felt tears well up. "But he still loves Martha. I see how he looks at her photo." "Of course he loves her," agreed Bernice, "and always will. But love isn't something that runs out. The heart grows to accommodate new loves. Mrs. Martha wouldn't want him to be alone for the rest of his life. She would want him to be happy again." Before Mary could answer, they heard the galloping of horses. It was Anthony, returning from town with Dr. Evans. The two men dismounted, and there was a serious expression on both their faces. Anthony climbed the porch steps, taking off his hat. "Mary, the doctor came for the weekly exam, but he also brought news." His tone made Mary's stomach turn. "What news?" Dr. Evans approached, placing his bag on the floor. "It's about Colonel Justin. He was arrested yesterday." Mary widened her eyes. "Arrested? Why?" Anthony sat heavily in a chair. The fire investigation continued. Sheriff Morris found his henchmen, Nash and Gerald. With a little pressure, they confessed everything. Said it was Justin who ordered the fire set on the barn. Said he paid them to do it. And said more, that Justin was planning something worse. "Worse how?" Mary's voice was just a whisper. Dr. Evans cleaned his glasses, uncomfortable. He was planning to kidnap you. Wanted to take you away, hide you somewhere far, to force Anthony to give up the family story. Thought that without you here, he wouldn't be able to prove anything and the gossip would die. Mary felt her blood run cold. Bernice let out a scream of horror. "Lord in heaven, that man is a demon." Anthony stood up, approaching Mary and kneeling beside her chair. "But he won't do anything. He is locked up and will stay locked up for a good long time. Attempted murder, arson, conspiracy." The judge wasn't lenient in the sentence at all. He took her hands, which were trembling. "You are safe, do you hear? You are safe here." Mary nodded, but tears ran down her face. "Why? Why does he hate me so much? I never did anything to him." "Because you exposed his hypocrisy," said Anthony softly. "Because your existence, your story, showed the whole town that powerful men aren't as respectable as they pretend to be. Showed that they are afraid of the truth." He wiped her tears with his thumb. "But the truth won. You won. And now you can live in peace." Dr. Evans cleared his throat. "Well, since I'm here, how about I examine this mom-to-be? See how the baby is doing." The exam was quick and efficient. The doctor palpated Mary's belly, listened to the baby's heartbeat with his stethoscope, asked questions about pains and contractions. Finally, he smiled. "Everything perfect. This baby could be born at any moment. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But when it comes, it will come fast. First pregnancy, but the position is great." He looked at Anthony. "Did you have everything prepared as I asked?" "I did," confirmed Anthony. "Bernice boiled the cloves, set aside clean water, prepared the room, and I'm staying here. I'm not leaving the farm until Mary has the baby." The doctor nodded approvingly. "Great. I'll leave my assistant, Miss Joan, here too. She's delivered more than 100 babies. If I don't arrive in time, she knows what to do." He closed the bag, looking at Mary kindly. "You're going to be a wonderful mother, I see that." That afternoon, while the sun descended slowly, Mary asked Anthony to take a walk through the fields. "I need to walk a little. My back hurts." He offered his arm, and together they descended the porch steps, following the narrow trail between the plants laden with crops. The smell of earth filled the air, mixed with the song of cicadas announcing the end of the day. "It was here," said Mary suddenly, stopping, It was here that I fell, in this exact spot. She looked around, recognizing the specific spot, the curvature of the trail. I remember thinking I was going to die, that my son was going to die, and that no one would care. Anthony squeezed her arm, but I cared. And look where we are now. Mary turned to him, eyes shining with emotion. Mr. Anthony, Anthony, I need to tell you something. You can say it, he said softly. Mary took a deep breath, gathering courage. I know this might be inappropriate. I know you still love Martha, and I would never try to take her place. But I need you to know. She paused, heart beating wildly. You saved my life, gave me family, gave me dignity, and in the process, I think I fell in love with you. The silence that followed seemed eternal. Anthony watched her with an expression Mary couldn't read. She began to regret it, to feel foolish. Sorry, I shouldn't have said it. Forget it, please. But he placed a finger on her lips, silencing her. Don't apologize. Never apologize for feeling. His clear eyes studied her with an intensity that made her tremble. Do you want to know the truth? I fell in love with you, too. Mary felt the air leave her. What? Anthony smiled, a sad but genuine smile. I don't know when exactly it happened. Maybe it was when I saw you defend your dignity in the square. Maybe it was in the conversations on the porch. Maybe it was when you stood by my side, even when the whole town condemned me. But it happened. He took her face in his hands. I love Martha. I always will. But she is gone. And you are here. And you made me feel alive again. But what about people? Whispered Mary. What will they say? Anthony laughed, a hoarse sound. After everything we've been through, do you still care what they say? He leaned in, touching his forehead to hers. Mary, I am 52. You are 19. We are blood relatives, even if distant. The town already talks about us anyway. So let them talk. I don't care anymore. I only care about you, about your son, about our family. It was Mary who closed the distance, rising on tiptoes and kissing him. It was a soft, tentative kiss, full of promises and hope. When they separated, both had tears in their eyes. When the baby is born, said Anthony with a hoarse voice, when you are recovered, if you want, I would like to ask you to marry me. The right way, on my knees, with a ring and everything. Mary sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They stood there embraced while the sun finished setting, painting the sky red and orange. Two hearts that had been broken, now mended by one another. Two souls that had been lost, now found. And there, in that field where everything had started with despair and pain, something new and beautiful was born. True love, love that heals, love that redeems. Night arrived, bringing a fresh wind from the hills. Mary was helping Bernice tidy the kitchen after dinner when she felt it. A strong contraction that made her double over, grabbing the edge of the table. Oh! Bernice dropped everything, running to her. Is it time? Is it starting? Another contraction, even stronger. I think so. Bernice shouted upstairs. Mr. Anthony, Miss Joan, it's time. The whole house went into motion. Anthony ran down the stairs, followed by the midwife, Miss Joan, a short, round woman of about 60, with firm hands and a calm voice. Calm down, my child. Let's get you to the room. Breathe deep. They helped her climb the stairs, each contraction making Mary moan in pain. Old Joe had already galloped off to get Dr. Evans, but everyone knew the baby wouldn't wait. In the room that had been Martha's, now Mary's, they laid her on the prepared bed. Miss Joan examined quickly. Already well dilated. This boy is in a hurry. She looked at Anthony, who was pale at the door. You, out, this isn't a place for a man. But Mary extended her hand. No, I want him here. Please. Miss Joan made a face of disapproval, but waved for him to enter. All right, but you stay over there in the corner. Don't get in the way. The hours that followed were the longest and most intense of Mary's life. The pain came in waves, stronger and stronger, closer and closer. She gripped Anthony's hand hard enough to bruise, screaming, crying, begging for it to end. I can't! Miss Joan wiped her face with a damp cloth. Yes, you can, girl. You are strong. You've been through worse. Now push. Anthony whispered encouragement in her ear, kissed her sweaty forehead, held firm, even when she cursed him between contractions. You can do it, my warrior. You can do it. Bernice prayed in the corner, Lucy's rosary in hands, asking for protection for her great-grandchild and the baby. And finally, when dawn was already lightening the horizon, when the sky began to change from black to blue, a different scream filled the room, the strong, indignant cry of a newborn. It's a boy, announced Miss Joan, lifting the bloody but perfect child. A beautiful, healthy boy. She cut the cord, cleaned the baby quickly, and placed him on Mary's chest. Mary looked at that tiny red face, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in a cry, and felt a love so intense it hurt. My son, she whispered, tears flowing freely. My little son. Anthony was crying too, without shame or embarrassment. He touched the baby's tiny head with reverence. He is perfect, absolutely perfect. Mary looked at him, at that man who had saved not only her life, but her soul, and smiled through tears. What are we going to call him? Anthony thought for a moment, then smiled. Augustus. Augustus Luke, in honor of my father and your grandmother. To honor the past, but also to start new, Mary nodded, touching her son's face. Augustus Luke Bernard, welcome to the world, my love. Welcome to the family. Miss Joan finished cleaning and arranging everything, then left the room with Bernice to give the new trio privacy. Anthony lay carefully beside Mary on the bed, one arm around her, both watching Augustus, who had already stopped crying and now looked around with curiosity. Look at us, said Mary softly. 3 months ago, I was lying in that field waiting to die, and now, she looked around the beautiful room, at the man she loved beside her, at the son in her arms. Now I have everything. I have family. I have love. I have a future. Anthony kissed her hair. And I have you both. I have a reason to wake up every day. I have a reason to live again. The days that followed were of sweet and tiring adaptation. Augustus was a good baby, but demanding, like all newborns. Mary learned to breastfeed, to change diapers, to calm the crying in the middle of the night. Anthony was always nearby, helping where he could, holding the baby while Mary slept, walking around the room with Augustus in his arms when he was fussy. The whole town came to visit. Mrs. Lucy brought baby clothes she had embroidered personally. Otis brought a carved wooden cradle. Father Andrew came to bless the child. And one by one, the residents of Paradise Valley bowed over the cradle, admiring the baby, commenting on how he had his mother's eyes and the strong chin of the Bernards. It was as if, through that baby, the whole town was asking for forgiveness, truly accepting that Mary was one of them. 3 weeks after Augustus's birth, on a clear January morning, Anthony woke up early and went to town. When he returned, he carried a small velvet box in his pocket. That afternoon, with Augustus sleeping in the cradle and Bernice taking care of everything, he asked Mary to take a walk to the fields. It was the same place where she had fallen, the same place where he had found her, the same place where they had confessed love for each other. "Mary Ann Oliver," he began, and his voice trembled slightly. "You appeared in my life when I thought it was over, when I thought there was nothing left for me but memories and loneliness." He knelt in the red earth, taking the box from his pocket and opening it to reveal a simple gold ring with a small but beautiful stone. "You taught me that you can start over, that you can love again, that you can be happy again." Mary was already crying, hands covering her mouth. "Marry me?" asked Anthony, eyes shining. "Let me be Augustus's father. Let me be your husband. Let me spend the rest of my life making you happy." "Marry me?" Mary fell to her knees in front of him, taking his face in her hands. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He put the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made to measure, and then kissed her right there, on the earth where it all began. The wedding happened 2 months later, in a simple but beautiful ceremony at the Church of Paradise Valley. Mary wore a white dress that Bernice had sewn with care, flowers in her hair, her grandmother's rosary in her hands. Anthony was in a dark suit, nervous as a boy in his first love. And when Father Andrew declared them husband and wife, when they kissed at the altar, the entire church applauded standing up. Augustus, 2 months old, was in Bernice's arms in the front row, dressed for baptism, eyes wide, watching everything. After the ceremony, there was a party at the farm. The whole town attended. There was music, plentiful food, dancing in the yard. And when night fell and the guests finally left, Anthony carried Mary in his arms into the house, an old tradition, while she laughed and protested that he was going to hurt himself. Months turned into years. Augustus grew strong and healthy, a happy boy with his mother's brown eyes and his adoptive father's light brown hair. When he was 3, he got a little sister, Helen Martha Bernard, named in honor of the 2 women who shaped that family. When he was 5, brother Gabriel came along. The house that was once silent and empty was now full of children's laughter, mess, and life. Mary transformed into a respected woman in the community. She began sewing for others, helping other girls who fell into disgrace, offering work and dignity. She created a small workshop on the farm where she employed women no one else wanted to hire. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she would say. "Everyone deserves someone who believes in them." It was her way of repaying the kindness she had received. Anthony continued working the farm, but now with renewed purpose. He planted a mulberry sapling in the exact spot where he found Mary years ago. "So we never forget," he said. And every time the family passed by, they stopped, touched the tree, remembered the journey they had traveled. From death to life, from despair to hope, from loneliness to love. 10 years after that day in March 1947, on a morning like so many others, Mary was on the porch of the big house shelling peas, exactly as she did when she first arrived there. But everything was different now. She wasn't a scared and lonely girl anymore. She was a wife, mother, matriarch. Her 3 children played in the yard, chasing chickens and laughing loudly. Anthony was in the fields, overseeing the harvest, and Bernice was in the kitchen, preparing lunch, humming an old song. Augustus, now 10 years old, ran up the porch steps. "Mom, Mom, Dad said today he's going to teach me to ride thunder alone." Mary smiled, smoothing her son's unruly hair. "Is he? Then you better be careful. Thunder is fast." The boy nodded enthusiastically, then stopped, looking at his mother with those eyes too serious for his age. "Mom, is it true you almost died when you were young? That Dad saved you?" Mary pulled her son into a hug. "It is true. I was lost, alone, without hope. And your father? Your father gave me everything. Gave me family, gave me love, gave me you." She kissed the top of his head. "That's why I always tell you all, be kind. Help those in need, because we never know when an act of kindness can change a whole life." Augustus nodded seriously, then ran back to his games. That afternoon, after lunch, Anthony and Mary took their daily walk to the mulberry tree. The tree was big now, laden with dark fruit. The children loved to pick and eat straight from the branch. Anthony held Mary's hand, interlacing fingers. He was 62 now, hair gray, wrinkles deeper, but his eyes still shone with that gentle light she loved. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. Mary looked at him surprised. "Why do you ask that?" Anthony shrugged, a smile playing on his lips. "Just want to be sure, want to know if I kept my promise to make you happy." Mary turned, placing her hands on his chest. "Anthony Bernard, you gave me more than happiness. You gave me dignity. You gave me a name. You gave me a family. You taught me that true love exists, that kindness exists, that miracles exist." She looked around, at the farm that was now hers too, at the fields that supported her family, at the house where her children grew up safe and loved. "I was a girl without a future, without hope, waiting to die in a field, and you carried me as if I were family. Because deep down, I always was, and you always knew." Anthony pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "No, you saved me. You brought me back to life, taught me to love again, gave me a reason to continue." They stood there embraced, while the afternoon sun shone through the leaves of the mulberry tree, while the wind brought the smell of crops and wet earth, while in the distance they heard the laughter of children playing. And in that perfect moment, Mary Bernard understood something deep about life, that the greatest blessings often come disguised as the greatest tragedies, that rock bottom can be the start of the climb, that losing everything can be the first step to gaining everything. She had fallen without strength in that field, waiting to die, and a farmer had carried her as if she were family. And in the process, both discovered that they were, not just by the blood they shared, but by the love they built. Family isn't just who is born together. Family is who chooses to stay together, who chooses to love despite everything, who chooses to save even when it would be easier to walk on by. And as the sun descended slowly over Hope Farm, painting the sky pink and gold, Mary closed her eyes and gave thanks. Thanked for having fallen, thanked for having been found, thanked for every moment of pain that brought her to that joy. Because in the end, it was worth it. Every tear, every judgment, every moment of despair, it was all worth it to get there, to have that family, that love, that life. And somewhere in the stars starting to appear in the sky, Mary imagined that her grandmother Lucy and Mrs. Martha were watching. They were smiling, they were at peace, knowing that the story that began with pain and injustice ended with love and redemption, that the sins of the past had been paid, that justice, even if late, had arrived. And that in the end, as always, love wins. Did you like this story? Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who needs to hear a story of hope today. And tell me, what did you think of this story of Mary and Anthony? Comment down below. And click on the next video for more emotional stories from the countryside. See you there!